Not all minds were made for the world they were born into. Nietzsche devoted his entire career to studying this condition, not as a disorder, but as a philosophical fact about how a small portion of human beings actually function. Northwestern University conducted the largest personality study ever done, with 1.5 million people. The data pointed to one conclusion: less than 2% of the population operates outside what the researchers bluntly called the average type. Nietzsche would have looked at that number and said, "Seems right." Then he would have asked the question science never asks: what is it actually like to be inside those 2%? Not the qualities, the traits, the essence of existing that way. That is what this video shows. Just Nietzsche, and what he saw clearly enough to express in words that still resonate 130 years later. Let's begin. The weight of your own eyes is the first thing you notice when you stop seeking permission to exist. The vast majority of lives are lived in a state of borrowed certainty, leaning on the pillars of tradition or the comfort of the crowd. But for the rare psyche, these pillars are made of smoke. You realize very early that the world is not a solid place. It is a collection of shared hallucinations. When you stop participating in the collective illusion, you are struck by a specific kind of vertigo. It is the realization that you are the sole architect of your own meaning. This is not an empowering realization you would find in a pamphlet. It is a cold, hard fact of your biology. You possess a high degree of psychological permeability. You see through things. The struggle is not to find your place in the world. It is to survive the awareness that you do not have one, and that creating one requires a level of internal discipline that would crush a more fragile constitution. You are essentially carved from a different fiber, one that does not bend easily under the pressure of social expectations. This lack of conformity is not a choice or a rebellion. It is an anatomical necessity. You simply cannot ignore the restraints. It is a solitary vantage point, situated at the edge of what everyone considers truth. But if you recognize this weight as a familiar companion, you are already part of a different lineage. If these observations resonate with the frequency of your own inner life, consider subscribing to this channel. The observer is here to give a name to what you have always felt, but never expressed. The rare psyche is not a place of peace. It is a construction site built on top of a volcanic fault. Most people seek a truce with their biology. They want their instincts to quiet down so they can sleep well. But if you belong to this small percentage, you have likely already realized that peace is just another name for stagnation. You are not looking for a way to resolve the internal friction. You are looking for a way to control it. There is a deep refusal to be governed by the primitive machinery of the body. While the world seeks immediate gratification and the safety of the crowd, you feel repelled by the simplicity of your own impulses. You see hunger, the desperate need for validation, and the frantic fear of insignificance as weights dragging you toward mediocrity. To exist this way is to live in a state of constant self-surveillance. You are not just the one who thinks, you are the one who observes the thinker, evaluating the quality of the logic and discarding everything that feels too human, too common, or too easy. This is the harsh reality of your internal standards. You need a mind sharp enough to break through its own illusions, and this process is inherently abrasive. It requires you to treat your own character as raw material that must be forcefully shaped to reflect your true intention, not your initial conditioning. Essentially, you are waging a war against gravity itself, trying to remain standing in an environment that rewards those who crawl. That is why you often feel like a stranger, even among friends, and why your very existence seems to provoke a strange discomfort in those who have chosen the easier path. The notion that a person possesses a fixed and unchanging true self is a convenient fiction for those who fear the work of self-construction. For the rare psyche, identity is not a destination reached through introspection. It is a territory conquered through an act of will. You understand that what you call personality is to a large extent a collection of accidental traits, genetic remnants, echoes of childhood, and the residue of every social interaction you have ever had. Accepting this fortuitous collection as your essence is a form of spiritual laziness. The rare individual treats their own nature as a landscape to be transformed. This is not self-improvement in the way the modern world understands it. It is a relentless editing of everything that does not serve your greater purpose. You begin to see your weaknesses not as flaws to be forgiven, but as technical errors to be corrected. This requires a frightening degree of honesty. You must admit that much of what you considered your essence is, in fact, merely a defense mechanism designed to keep you safe. Stripping away these layers is a difficult process. It feels like losing parts of yourself and, in a way, you truly are. But the psyche that survives this pruning becomes something entirely different. It becomes a concentrated force, no longer dispersed by any passing impulse or social trend. You shift from a reactive creature to a proactive presence, a person who dictates the terms of their own relationship with reality. You are not interested in being understood by the crowd. You are interested in being undeniable to yourself. This mastery over your own inner landscape transforms the way you perceive the passage of time and the inevitability of your own choices. It forces a confrontation with the things you cannot change and with the specific way you choose to deal with them. This is where internal architecture meets the external world, at the intersection between your will and the weight of your own history. Nietzsche did not view the human condition with a single drop of sentimentalism. He saw the rare psyche not as a finished product, but as a dangerous transition, a tightrope stretched over an abyss. To possess this kind of mind is to live in a state of perpetual self-overcoming. It is the understanding that everything you are today must be treated as fuel for what you will become tomorrow. This is not a comfortable process, it is a controlled demolition. Nietzsche's observation was that the majority seeks the happiness of the soul in green pastures, a state of painless and mediocre contentment. But for the rare few, happiness is not the goal. Power over oneself is. This will to power has nothing to do with dominating others, and everything to do with the internal authority to command your own instincts. You become the legislator of your own values. When the external world loses the ability to tell you what is good or bad, you are left with the terrible responsibility of defining these terms for yourself. This is the moment when most people break. They cannot endure the silence of a universe that offers no script. But if you possess this rare psychological constitution, you will find a strange and cold clarity in that silence. You do not seek a guide because you have realized that the very concept of a path is a distraction. You are the path. You are the one who extracts meaning from the raw and chaotic data of existence. You must be willing to look at your most cherished beliefs and realize that they were merely crutches. Walking without them is the mark of a rare psyche. The world is obsessed with the idea of healing, a term that usually implies a return to a state of quiet and carefree comfort. But for the rare psyche, the concept of healing is largely irrelevant. You are not seeking to fix a broken machine. You are seeking to master a complex one. This mastery begins with the recognition of your own darkest contours. You perceive the patterns of self-sabotage, the cycles of recursive thinking, and the subtle ways in which you negotiate your own potential to avoid the discomfort of growth. Identifying these patterns is not an exercise in self-pity. It is a tactical assessment. You begin to observe your own behavior with the detachment of a surveyor mapping difficult terrain. This detachment is your greatest strength. It allows you to observe the wave of an emotion or the force of an old habit without being carried away by it. You become the center of gravity within your own mind. This leads to a form of discipline that is not based on punishment or willpower, but on a fundamental refusal to be a mere spectator of your own life. You take responsibility for the invisible forces that drive you, transforming your internal chaos into a focused and singular direction. It is a solitary path, as it requires you to be your own judge and jury, but it is the only path that leads to a true sense of self-control, a work of self-knowledge that must be done. There is a final and icy threshold that the rare psyche must cross, the acceptance of its own trajectory. A large number of people spend their energy arguing with the past, trying to negotiate with the what-ifs and the if-onlys, as if reality were a draft that could be rewritten. But for you, understanding settles in when you realize that every scar and every moment of isolation were necessary coordinates on the map of your current self. This is a sharp acceptance of things as they are. It is the refusal to wish that a single grain of sand in the hourglass of your life were different. When you stop resisting the reality of your existence, you stop wasting energy in the void of regret. You become a contained force. This does not mean that life becomes easier. It means that you become more substantial. Your choices carry more weight because they are no longer diluted by the desire for an alternative reality. You find yourself at the center of your own story, recognizing that the same things that made you an outsider are the same ones that granted you the vision to see through the fog. This is not a comforting thought. It is a heavy one, because it eliminates the last excuse for inaction. If everything that happened had to happen for you to be here, then what you do next is the only thing that truly matters. You are no longer waiting for the world to make sense to you. You are the one who imposes meaning on a world that has none. This level of self-sufficiency is the hallmark of the mind Nietzsche described, one that not only survives its own depth, but uses that depth as the foundation for a new kind of existence. This brings us to a specific vantage point from which we can observe the entire landscape of this psychological rarity and ask what it truly demands of the person who possesses it. The price of seeing beyond the crowd is a specific kind of isolation. You realize that your inner landscape is not a public square, it is a private sanctuary. Most people are not prepared to handle the gravity of what you observe, and trying to force understanding only creates unnecessary friction. Absolute transparency with the collective is often just a form of self-exposure. Instead, you develop a social interface, a version that is functional, polite, and completely separate from your essence. You learn to move with calculated lightness, while the true weight of your existence remains hidden. This is not deception, this is preservation. It is the understanding that your development requires a certain level of secrecy. You become a presence within the machinery of social life, performing your roles while your mind remains focused on its own evolution. One of the most striking characteristics of this rare psychological constitution is the complete absence of resentment. In a world that practically runs on complaints, refusing to blame circumstances is an act of extreme transgression. Most people spend their vital energy looking for someone to blame, a parent, a partner, or a setback, to explain their stagnation. But when you operate on this different frequency, you realize that blame is nothing more than a waste of your power. You do not see your setbacks as injustices, you see them as gravity. You do not negotiate with gravity, and you certainly do not cry over it. Nietzsche observed that the noble soul is too full to remain embittered. This does not mean that you are kind or compassionate in a religious sense. It means that you simply have no space for that negative vibration. You understand that every gram of energy spent pointing fingers is a gram of energy you are not using to strengthen your own resolve. You accept the cards you have been dealt and play them with cold, analytical precision. This refusal to participate in the cult of victimhood makes you incomprehensible to most. They see your lack of complaints as a lack of feeling, but in reality it is a sign of your internal density. You are too busy integrating your pain to waste time broadcasting it. The rare psyche understands that being fully seen by everyone means being constantly interrupted. There is a specific strategy for appearing ordinary. You learn to adopt the language, gestures, and superficial concerns of the environment around you because they provide a necessary layer of protection. This is the pathos of distance in action. You realize that the depth of your thoughts would only cause alarm or confusion in a casual setting, so you offer a selected and simplified version of yourself. You move through your professional and social circles like a traveler in a foreign land, fluent in the local dialect yet never forgetting your true origin. This is not a form of dishonesty, it is a form of hygiene. You are protecting the sanctity of your internal work from the noise of the uninitiated. You find yourself standing in a grocery line or sitting in a meeting, listening to the trivialities of everyday life, and you feel the immense weight of the things you are not saying. This creates a strange double existence, where your external life is a calm surface and your internal life is a turbulent ocean. You are the only one who knows the true dimension of the territory you are navigating. Living behind this mask requires a level of psychological endurance that would leave others exhausted. But for you, the alternative, trying to be understood, is far more draining. This isolation, however, ultimately leads to a confrontation with the most terrifying aspect of your autonomy: the realization that there are no external parameters for your success. When you finally free yourself from the expectations of the crowd and the safety of traditional morality, you are left in a vacuum. This is the death of God that Nietzsche spoke of, not as a theological event, but a psychological one. It means that the guiding star you learned to follow has gone out. For the common mind, this realization leads to a paralyzing nihilism, the sense that if nothing matters, then nothing is worth doing. But for the rare psyche, this vacuum is the only place where true creation can happen. You do not seek a pre-existing path because you have accepted that the map is a lie. You are forced to become your own legislator. You must decide, in the silence of your own mind, what is worth your blood and what is worth your contempt. This total independence is the final stage of your differentiation. You no longer need the world to give you a why for your existence. You supply the why yourself with every decisive action you take. You are the architect, the builder, and the judge of your own temple. From my point of view, there is a recurring temptation to label this condition as some kind of gift or a superior state of being, but that seems like empty consolation to me. To me, it looks like a demanding and high-risk trade-off. I observe most people seeking a version of peace that is essentially a numbing of the senses, while the rare psyche is forced into a state of hyper-awareness that never truly rests. It is a fundamental orientation that dictates how you breathe and how you move in an environment, rather than a badge of honor. You do not find this kind of life. You realize it is the only one you are equipped to live, and the real test is whether you can endure the coldness of your own company without hesitation. If these patterns have reflected your own internal reality, the period of mere recognition has come to an end. Now you know the names of the forces that have been operating in the shadows of your behavior. The need for resolution has surpassed the comfort of understanding. Every moment you spend conforming to a pattern you did not establish is a moment in which you are actively erasing your own existence. Consider which specific trait you are currently maintaining just to avoid the friction of being different. This is not a request for confession, it is a demand for an audit. And if you are prepared to continue this process of unmasking, subscribe to The Observer and make sure your notifications are turned on. The work of becoming who you are is a solitary effort, never a collaborative one. What is the biggest lie you are currently telling yourself just to stay comfortable? Leave your answer below. Thank you for watching this far. Until the next discomfort,